13-year-old girl walks into a motorcycle club compound with a torn backpack, a swollen lip, and a photograph from a war her father never came home from. What she asks these battle-hardened bikers will change everything. Because sometimes the fight doesn't end when the shooting stops. The compound sat at the edge of town where the asphalt crumbled into gravel and the noise of civilization faded into the hum of distant engines. A squat building with peeling paint, a chain-link fence decorated with rust, and a hand-painted sign that read Black Arrows MC. Out front, 3 bikers lounged against their Harleys, cigarettes dangling, their laughter carrying across the empty lot. Then she appeared. A girl, maybe 13, with dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail and a backpack that looked like it had survived a war of its own. One strap was torn, barely holding. Her jeans were scuffed at the knees, and when she got close enough, they could see her lips swollen on one side, the purple blue of a fresh bruise spreading across her cheek like spilled ink. The laughter died. She stopped at the gate, small hands gripping the chain link, and looked directly at the nearest biker, a broad-shouldered man with a gray beard and more scars than tattoos. "I need to talk to whoever was with my dad in Fallujah," she said. Her voice didn't waver. The man, call sign Wrench, blinked. "Kid, this ain't. My dad's name is Daniel Russell. Sergeant Daniel Russell. Marine Corps, 2nd Deployment, 2004. She said it like she'd rehearsed it 100 times. "Someone here saved his life. I need to talk to them." Wrench exchanged glances with the others. One of them stepped forward. "How'd you find us?" "He still has the photo. You're all in it." That changed things. Wrench pulled out his phone, and within minutes, boots were hitting concrete inside the clubhouse. The door swung open and out stepped Reaper, vice president of the Black Arrows, 6 feet 3 inches of muscle and bad decisions, with eyes that had seen things most people only had nightmares about. He'd earned his road name in Fallujah, pulling wounded Marines from situations that should have killed everyone involved. He looked at the girl, then at Wrench. "Talk." Natalie didn't wait for an invitation. She unzipped her backpack slowly, carefully, and pulled out a photograph protected by a plastic sleeve. She held it up to the fence. Reaper's expression shifted. In the photo, 4 men stood in desert camouflage under a merciless Iraqi sun. In the center, Sergeant Daniel Russell, grinning. To his left, Reaper. To his right, Big Benson before the limp and the gray. And kneeling in front, Buck, the medic. "He told me about you," Natalie said quietly. "When I was little, before everything got bad, he said you pulled him out of a burning Humvee. Said he wouldn't be here without you." She paused, her jaw tightening. "But now he's drinking. Every night. The drinking turns to yelling. The yelling turns to..." She touched her swollen lip, then dropped her hand quickly. The air went still. Big Benson emerged from the clubhouse, leaning on his cane, a souvenir from an IED. He took one look at the photo and his face went pale. "Danny Russell. Haven't heard that name in years." He stopped answering calls. Buck added, appearing beside him. "Moved his family out." "Where?" "Here. We've been here for 3 years. He doesn't talk about the Marines anymore. Doesn't talk about anything really, except when he's drunk." Her voice cracked slightly. "I didn't know where else to go. The school counselor says it's complicated. My mom says he's sick. But I remember what he used to say, that you never leave a brother behind." She looked directly at Reaper. "So I'm asking, please, he needs you again." Reaper reached through the fence and took the photograph. "Where's your old man now, kid?" "Home. Probably passed out on the couch." "Your mom?" "At work. She works doubles most days. I think she's scared to come home." No one spoke. Every man standing there knew what war leaves behind. The weight never went away. Some days you just learn to stand under it better. Reaper handed the photo back. "You got an address?" Natalie rattled it off from memory. "Go home. Stay with your mom tonight if you can. We'll handle this." "What are you going to do?" Reaper's expression was unreadable. "What we should have done a long time ago." The knock came at 9 p.m. firm but not threatening. Daniel Russell sat up from the couch, his head pounding. the empty whiskey bottle on the coffee table a silent witness. He stumbled to the door, annoyed, ready to tell whoever it was to get lost. But when he opened it, the words died in his throat. 5 men stood on his porch. Leather cuts, graying beards, eyes that had seen the same hell he had. And in the center, holding that damned photograph, was Reaper. "Hello, Danny." Daniel's knees nearly buckled. Shame crashed through him with a force no IED had ever matched. These men had pulled him from fire and metal, had promised to stay brothers long after the uniform came off. And he'd vanished, changed his number, moved states, buried himself so deep in his own wreckage that he forgot there were people who'd once refused to let him die. "We going to do this on the porch, or are you going to invite us in?" Big Benson's voice was gravel and warmth. Daniel stepped aside. They filed in, taking in the scene without judgment. The bottles, the stale air, the photographs on the wall from a life that felt like someone else's. Buck moved to the kitchen, filled a glass of water, and set it in front of Daniel without a word. Reaper placed the photograph on the table. "She remembered. You forgot." Daniel stared at the image. "For men, brothers. A lifetime ago." "I didn't forget," he said finally, his voice raw. "I just couldn't. After everything, I couldn't be that guy anymore." "No," Reaper agreed. "You're not. That guy wouldn't let his kid walk into a biker compound with a busted lip looking for help." The words landed like a punch. Daniel's hands shook. "I never meant. I don't remember doing that. I swear I don't remember." "That's the problem, brother. You're so drunk you don't remember anything." The next morning, Big Benson showed up at 6 a.m. in a pickup truck. He didn't ask permission, just leaned on the horn until Daniel emerged, squinting against the sun. "Get in." "Benson, I can't." Wasn't a question. They drove in silence to a community center where a handwritten sign read, "AA meeting. Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, 7 a.m. inside." Plastic chairs formed a circle around people who looked like Daniel felt. Worn down, hanging on, showing up anyway. Benson took a seat and gestured to the empty chair beside him. For the next hour, Daniel heard his own demons spoken aloud by people he'd never met. The anger that came from nowhere, the gaps in memory, the look on their kids' faces. When it was his turn to speak, he couldn't. But Benson didn't push, just sat there, solid and present. Meanwhile, Buck had made his own visit to Linda Russell at the hospital cafeteria during her break. He introduced himself, showed her the photograph, and watched her eyes fill with tears she'd been holding back for years. "He talks about you sometimes when he's sober. Says you were the best men he ever knew. We should have looked harder for him," Buck admitted. "Should have known something was wrong when he went quiet." Linda wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "I've thought about leaving, packing Natalie's things and just going. But every time I get close, I see flashes of who he used to be." She looked up. "Can you really help him?" "We're going to try. But Linda, you need to protect yourself and your daughter if things escalate." "I know. I've already looked into restraining orders. I wanted to give him one more chance." Buck slid a business card across the table. "This is a lawyer. Veteran-friendly. Won't charge you. And this," he added a second card, "is a crisis hotline. 24 hours. You call if you need anything." That same week, Natalie found herself in the Black Arrow's garage. Cherry, the club's operations manager and the only woman wearing a full patch, stood before a heavy bag, wrapping her hands. "Your dad teach you how to fight?" Cherry asked. Natalie shook her head. "Good. Most men teach their daughters to be small, to apologize, to take up less space." She tossed Natalie a pair of training gloves. "I'm going to teach you the opposite." For an hour, Cherry taught her stance, breath control, and how to throw a punch that started in the hips. This wasn't about hurting anyone. This was about Natalie remembering she had a right to feel safe. "You walked into our compound alone," Cherry said, holding the bag steady. "That took guts. Don't lose that. Whatever happens with your old man, you remember you're stronger than you think." But strength didn't make things easier. 3 days into Daniel's new routine, he missed a meeting. Then another. Big Benson showed up anyway, knocking until Daniel answered. eyes red and reeking of whiskey. "I can't do this," Daniel slurred. "I'm too far gone." Benson didn't argue, didn't lecture. "Then I'll see you tomorrow." And he did. Every single day. It happened on a Tuesday. Daniel had stayed sober longer than he had in months. The tremors had faded. Clarity was creeping back in. He'd even had dinner with his family, really present, telling Natalie about a repair job at the veteran's auto shop Buck had connected him with. Then something shifted. A phone call from an old Marine buddy who didn't make it as far as Daniel had. A funeral he couldn't afford to attend. By nightfall, Daniel was 3 bottles deep and spiraling. Linda came home to find him in the garage, surrounded by his old deployment gear, crying, ugly and raw, talking to ghosts only he could see. "Danny, please come inside. Let me call Buck." "I don't need Buck." His voice cracked like thunder. "I don't need any of them." Natalie appeared in the doorway, small and terrified. "Dad, go to your room," Daniel roared. And something in his eyes was so far gone that Linda stepped between them instinctively. That's when the motorcycles arrived. 6 Harleys rolled up the driveway. Reaper dismounted first, followed by Big Benson, Buck, and 3 other patched members. Daniel staggered out of the garage, rage and shame twisting his features. "You got no right. This is my house. My family. Your family called us," Reaper said evenly. Linda had Buck's number on speed dial now. "So what? You're here to save me again? Play hero? I didn't ask for this." "Your daughter asked." Buck's voice cut through the night. "She's 13 years old and she walked into our compound alone because her father, her hero, had become the thing she was most afraid of." The words hit like a rifle shot. Daniel stumbled back. "You think you're the only one drowning?" Reaper stepped forward. "I wake up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat. Haven't slept through a night in years. I see faces of men I couldn't save. And some nights, brother, I sit in my garage with my service pistol and wonder if anyone would even notice." The street had gone silent. "You want to know what keeps me going? It's knowing that at 3 o'clock in the morning, when the walls close in, I can pick up the phone. Someone will answer. Someone else is awake too, fighting the same fight." He paused. "You had that, Danny. You had brothers who would have answered. But you cut the line. Decided to fight this alone. That's when you started losing." Daniel's legs gave out. He dropped to the driveway, head in his hands. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this." "You can't be." Big Benson lowered himself down beside Daniel. "That man's gone. The war saw to that. But what's left of us, that gets to choose what comes next. You can become someone your daughter doesn't have to be afraid of." From the porch, Natalie watched through tears. Cherry had arrived on her own bike, standing beside the girl, a protective hand on her shoulder. Reaper extended his hand. Daniel stared at it, calloused, scarred, steady. The same hand that had dragged him from burning metal 20 years ago. He took it. Inside the house, Linda had made coffee. Buck laid out pamphlets, intensive outpatient programs, veterans therapy groups, medication-assisted treatment options. Not suggestions. Requirements. "Here's how this works," Reaper said. "You do 90 meetings in 90 days. You see the therapist Buck's setting up. You take whatever meds they prescribe. And every single day, one of us checks in. You don't get to disappear this time." Daniel looked at Linda, who stood with her arms crossed, exhausted but hopeful. Then at Natalie, whose eyes held something he hadn't seen in years. Not fear, but belief. "And if I mess up again, then we show up again," Big Benson said simply. "That's what brothers do." Linda spoke, her voice steady despite the tears. "But Danny, if you hurt her again, if you hurt either of us, they won't be the ones you deal with. I'll take Natalie and you'll never see us again. This is your last chance." The weight of it settled over the room. Daniel nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll do it. Whatever it takes." Reaper stood, placing the photograph on the coffee table. "You saved my life in Ramadi. Covered me when I was pinned down. I never forgot that. Now it's my turn. We're not giving up on you, brother. Don't give up on yourself. The beginning was hell. Daniel's hands shook so badly that Buck had to help him sign the intake forms at the VA outpatient clinic. The nightmares got worse before they got better. Some mornings, Big Benson would arrive to find Daniel sitting on the front steps at 5 a.m., unable to face another minute of his own thoughts. But Benson never left. He'd just sit beside him, two broken veterans watching the sun come up. The meetings became routine. Daniel stopped counting days, started counting hours, eventually just focused on breathing through the next 60 seconds. He started recognizing faces, learning names. Marcus, a Gulf War vet who'd lost his family before finding his way back. Jennifer, a former Army nurse whose hands still shook. They didn't judge. They just understood. Somewhere in the second month, something shifted. Daniel started talking in meetings, small pieces that started forming something real. The job Buck had arranged turned out to be more than just work. Martina's auto repair was run entirely by veterans. Men who understood that some days you needed to focus on carburetors and transmissions because thinking about anything else would break you. The owner, Carlos, had a simple rule. You show up on time, you work hard, and nobody asks about your bad days unless you want to talk .at home. Things thawed slowly. Linda didn't flinch anymore when Daniel moved too quickly. Her phone stayed on the nightstand now, not clutched in her hand with Buck's number ready to dial. Natalie was more cautious. She'd learned not to trust good days. But Cherry kept working with her, kept reminding her that healing wasn't linear. He's trying, Cherry said one afternoon. That's worth something. But you don't owe him forgiveness on anyone's timeline but your own. Natalie nodded. I know. I miss having a dad. The real one. Then tell him that. That night Daniel came home from work to find Natalie sitting at the kitchen table. Homework spread out in front of her. Can you help me with this? She asked quietly. You used to be good at this stuff. It was such a small thing. Daniel's throat tightened as he pulled out a chair and sat beside his daughter. They worked through the problems together. And when Natalie got one right, she smiled. Tentative, fragile, but real. I'm sorry, Daniel said suddenly. For everything. For making you scared. For making you have to be the brave one. Natalie was quiet for a long moment. Cherry says you're sick, that it's not your fault. But that doesn't mean it didn't hurt. I know. And she says you're getting better. That you're trying. I am. Every day. I swear to you, Nat. I'm trying. She looked at him with eyes too old for 13. Then keep trying. Because I want my dad back. By the time spring arrived, months after Natalie had walked through that compound gate, the Black Arrows held their annual memorial ride. A procession through town to honor fallen veterans, ending at the memorial park where names were carved into black granite. This year, they'd invited Daniel to ride. Not on a bike, he didn't have one anymore, but in the support van carrying the flags and wreaths. Linda and Natalie came too. Daniel wore his old Marine jacket, cleaned and pressed for the first time in years. His hands still shook slightly, probably always would, but his eyes were clear, sober, present. When they arrived at the memorial, the bikers formed up, engines rumbling like rolling thunder. Reaper stood at the front, reading names. Some were brothers they'd served with. Others were members they'd lost to different wars. The ones fought in living rooms against enemies that wore familiar faces in the mirror. Daniel stood beside Big Benson and Buck, shoulder to shoulder like they'd been in that photograph from another lifetime. When it came time to place the wreaths, Natalie stepped forward carrying the memorial flag, and Daniel walked beside her, one hand on her shoulder. Afterward, Reaper approached Daniel. How you holding up? One day at a time, Daniel said. It was the truth and the most honest thing he'd said in years. That's all any of us can do. Reaper clapped him on the shoulder. You know you've got a place here, right? If you ever want it. I know. And maybe someday. Daniel looked at Natalie, who was talking with Cherry, actually laughing. But right now, I need to focus on being the father she deserves. The husband Linda deserves. That's my mission. Reaper nodded. Then we'll be here for whatever you need. As the sun set and the motorcycles began rolling out one by one, Natalie found her father standing before the granite wall, his fingers tracing names of men he'd known. You okay, Dad? He turned, and when he looked at her, something had shifted. The fog was gone. "Yeah, kiddo. I think I'm going to be." She slipped her hand into his, and together they walked back to where Linda waited. Behind them, the rumble of Harleys faded into the distance, but the promise remained. Brothers don't quit. Warriors don't abandon their posts. And sometimes the longest road home is the one that leads you back to yourself. Natalie walked into that compound asking them to save her father. But in the end, she saved them all, reminding these warriors that the most important battles are fought at home for the people we love.